For most of my adult life, I believed I was the kind of man who paid attention. That was always my edge. At work, in negotiations, in the way I read a room. My wife used to joke about it. She'd say I noticed everything except what was right in front of me. Looking back, I think she meant that as a warning. I'm 51 years old. I spent 22 years as a project manager for a commercial construction firm in Charlotte. I have 2 kids. My son and my daughter, both grown now. I was married for 16 years to a woman I thought I knew completely. Her name was Nora. My name doesn't matter. I'm just the guy this happened to. Our life looked good from the outside. We had a 4-bedroom house in a neighborhood where people walked their dogs and waved from the driveway. We had date nights on Fridays, church on most Sundays, backyard barbecues in the summer. My daughter was finishing her junior year at UNC. My son was 23, working at a tech startup in Raleigh, doing well. Nora did freelance bookkeeping from home. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. At least I thought so. The day I found out, I wasn't supposed to be home. I had driven to the office that Tuesday morning like usual, but by 10 I felt wrong. Headache behind my eyes, joints aching, the kind of fatigue that hits fast and hard. My office manager told me to go home before I infected the whole team. I didn't argue. I drove back, parked in the garage, and let myself in through the kitchen door. The house was quiet. I figured Nora had gone out to run errands. I went to the living room, stretched out on the couch without taking off my jacket, and closed my eyes. Nora came home about 20 minutes later. She didn't come through the garage. She'd been in her car in the driveway, it turned out, finishing a phone call. She came through the front door. She wasn't alone. Her friend Belinda was with her. They were laughing about something as they came in, and they went straight to the kitchen. The couch faced the fireplace, away from the hallway. They had no idea I was there. I wasn't trying to listen. At first, I wasn't even paying full attention. I was half asleep, eyes closed, riding out the headache. But then I heard my son's name. "Does he know about Tyler?" Belinda asked. "God, no," Nora said, and she laughed. Not nervous, not quiet, just laughed. "He trusts me completely. That's always been his thing." "What about the paternity thing? You said you weren't sure." There was a pause, then, "Tyler and my husband look enough alike that no one's ever questioned it. Not even the pediatrician. I made sure of that." I stopped breathing. "You mean when he was born?" "I mean I handled it," Nora said. "I took care of it. I've been taking care of it for 23 years and it's fine." 23 years. My son is 23 years old. I don't remember getting up from the couch. I don't remember going upstairs. I came back to myself sitting on the edge of the bathtub in the master bathroom with the door locked, staring at the tile floor, my hands shaking so badly I had to press them between my knees. I could hear them downstairs, still talking, the low murmur of it rising through the floor. I couldn't make out the words anymore. It didn't matter. I had already heard enough to break everything. I sat in that bathroom for over an hour. When I finally came downstairs, I told Nora I'd just gotten home, said the headache had hit on the drive back, and I'd been in the car trying to sleep it off. She fussed over me, made me tea, told me to rest. I looked at her face and tried to find some sign that she was the person I'd just heard talking in that kitchen, and I couldn't. She looked exactly like my wife. That night after she fell asleep, I drove to a 24-hour diner 2 miles from our house and sat in a booth until 3 in the morning trying to think clearly. I wrote down everything I'd heard on a paper napkin, the exact words. "Does he know about Tyler?" Tyler. A name I had never heard before. 23 years. I handled it. I folded the napkin and put it in my shirt pocket and drove home and didn't sleep. The next morning I called the one person I knew I could trust without question, my brother. He lives 40 minutes away, owns a landscaping company, and has been my closest friend since we were kids. I drove to his place before 7 and told him everything sitting in his truck in the driveway. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You need a lawyer first, before you do anything else." He was right. I called a family law attorney in Charlotte named Hadley, a woman my colleague had used 2 years earlier during his divorce. Her assistant got me in that same afternoon. I walked into her office and told the story twice, once to get it out of my head and once slowly so she could take notes. She didn't react with shock. She'd heard variations of this before. What she said was, "The first thing you need to determine is whether your son is biologically yours. Everything else follows from that." She gave me a referral to a private DNA testing service that could process results within 5 business days with a cheek swab. No court order required for paternity knowledge. I just needed a sample from my son and from me, and I could collect them myself. She also told me to secure my finances, change my beneficiaries quietly, and document everything. She said, "Don't confront yet. Don't tip your hand." The worst thing I could do right now was react before I had facts. I drove home that evening and continued being a husband. That part was harder than I can describe. I went through dinners, conversations, the ordinary texture of our days, carrying this thing like a stone in my chest. Nora seemed completely normal. That was almost the worst part. Not that she was cold or distant or guilty looking, but that she was entirely herself. Warm, chatty. She brought home my favorite soup from the deli on Thursday. She laughed at something on television and reached over and squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. I don't know how I did it. I called my son that weekend and asked if he wanted to get lunch, just the two of us, the way we used to before he moved to Raleigh. He drove down Saturday, and we went to a burger place we'd been going to since he was in high school. I looked at him across the table. He has my build, my hands. That's what I'd always seen. Now I was looking at him differently, and I hated myself for it. After lunch, when he hugged me goodbye in the parking lot, I pulled back and said there was something on his jacket. A piece of lint. And I used the moment to press a piece of tape to the collar of his shirt, the kind they sell at the testing service, sealed in a small evidence bag in my pocket. He didn't notice. He drove away waving. I took my own swab that night in the bathroom with the door locked again. I mailed both samples Monday morning. The results came back Thursday afternoon, emailed to an account I'd created specifically for this. My son is not biologically mine. I printed the results at a FedEx near the office and drove straight to my attorney's office without calling ahead. Hadley's assistant saw my face and got her out of a meeting. I sat down and put the printed page on her desk and didn't say anything. She read it and looked up at me and said quietly, "I'm sorry. Let's talk about what comes next." What came next was I hired a private investigator, not to surveil Nora, the window for that had probably passed long ago, but to find Tyler. Hadley explained that if I wanted to pursue a paternity suit, or if I wanted to pursue full custody of my other child, my daughter, whose paternity I was now questioning, I needed to identify the biological father. The PI found Tyler within 10 days. His last name was Garland. He was 54 years old, lived in Concord, about 20 miles north of Charlotte, married, had been married to the same woman for 28 years, had 2 grown kids of his own. He had no idea. I want to say something here about that specific moment, because it changed how I thought about everything that followed. When the PI handed me Tyler Garland's background file, I sat in my car and read it, and what I felt wasn't the rage I expected. It was something colder and stranger, a kind of vertigo. This man had been living his whole life not knowing he had a son. He had been robbed of something too. It didn't make me feel better. But it made Nora's calculation feel even more deliberate, even more contained, even more chosen. She had made this choice alone and sustained it for 23 years, and apparently never once lost a night of sleep over it. I requested a paternity test for my daughter too. I don't know why I needed to know exactly. Maybe just to know the full shape of what was true. The results came back negative. My daughter is mine. She has no idea any of this is happening. 2 weeks after receiving the paternity results, I had my attorney draft divorce papers. I told Nora on a Sunday evening after my daughter had gone back to Chapel Hill, and my son was in Raleigh, and the house was just the 2 of us. I sat across from her at the kitchen table and I put the DNA results in front of her. I didn't accuse. I didn't raise my voice. I just pointed at the paper and waited. She stared at it, then she said, "Where did you get this?" It wasn't a question. Her voice was flat. She already knew what she was looking at. "I've known about Tyler for 5 weeks," I said. "I know everything." She was quiet for a very long time. Then she put her face in her hands. Here's what she told me over the next 3 hours. She had been involved with Tyler Garland for 4 years before we got married. They had ended things when he met his wife, but they reconnected briefly. One time, she said, just once, about 2 months after our wedding. She got pregnant. She did the math and realized there was genuine ambiguity. She decided not to find out. She made a bet on resemblance and luck and silence, and she won it for 23 years. She asked me if there was any way through this. I thought about it. I genuinely did. We had 16 years. We had a daughter together, a real history, things I valued and would grieve. I thought about whether this was something a person could carry and continue. And I thought about my son. I thought about the fact that he is 23 years old and doesn't know who his father is. He was denied that knowledge before he even took his first breath, by a decision that wasn't mine to make or his to know about. I thought about Tyler Garland, who has a son he doesn't know exists. I thought about what it would mean to keep that buried, not because I forgave it, but because it was easier, and what that would make me. I told Nora I wanted the divorce. She didn't fight it. The divorce was finalized 7 months later. The settlement was straightforward. We split the assets equitably. She kept her car and some furniture. I kept the house. She moved into an apartment across town. We have been civil in the way that people are civil when they are devastated and exhausted and just want it to be over. My attorney, with my permission, reached out to Tyler Garland through a formal letter that explained the situation and requested a paternity test. He agreed within 48 hours. The results confirmed what I already knew. Tyler and I had one phone conversation after that. He was shaken and quiet and kept saying he didn't know, that he had no idea. I believed him. I don't know what he's going to do with the information. That's his to decide. I gave him my son's contact information at my son's request once my son knew. That conversation, telling my son, was the hardest thing I have ever done. He took it badly at first. Not at me, I don't think, but just badly. He went quiet. He left. He didn't call for 2 weeks. And then he came back, and we sat in my kitchen, and he cried, and I held on to him and told him that nothing about who I am to him has changed. That I have been his father since the day he was born, and I plan to stay that way until the day I die. He nodded and wiped his face and said, "I know, Dad." And that's where we are. He's met Tyler twice now. I don't know how that's going. I don't ask. It's not mine to manage. My daughter knows. She took it differently, with anger, mostly directed at her mother. That relationship is complicated now in ways I couldn't have predicted. She and I talk more than we used to. She calls on Sunday evenings. I think we're both trying. As for Nora, I see her at family events occasionally. My daughter's graduation last spring, my son's birthday dinner in the fall. We are polite. I don't hate her. I spent a long time expecting to and being surprised that I didn't, and then I figured out that what I feel instead is something like grief. I grieve the version of her I thought she was. I grieve the marriage I thought I had. I don't think she was a bad person in every dimension of herself, but she made a bad choice and she protected it for 2 decades, and that protection cost me something I can never fully calculate. I'm not going to tell you I've moved on and found peace or any of the things people say in stories like this. What I'll tell you is that I'm still here. I work. I see my kids. I have dinner with my brother on the first Sunday of every month. I sleep better than I did the year after the divorce. I've gone on a few dates, nothing serious. Sometimes I think about that afternoon on the couch, the headache that sent me home, the sound of Nora's laugh in the kitchen just before everything changed. I think about how close I came to sleeping through it, to getting up 5 minutes earlier, or coming through the front door instead of the garage, or any of 100 small differences that would have meant I never knew. And I don't know if that would have been better. I think I needed to know. I think not knowing was already costing me something I couldn't name, some dull and persistent wrong note in a life that was supposed to sound right. The truth broke a lot of things. But at least I know what I'm carrying now. At least it's mine.